Hey guys, it's Julian, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how to make hard melodic techno in the style of Inhalt Der Nacht, Verruf, and Diva. As usual, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video is available at the top of the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there, because it's already available, and yeah, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that's going up here is we have the kick rumble, which sounds like this. So this is being made with two layers, the kick and the rumble, hence the name kick rumble. And so you can see the kick is actually completely dry here. So this is something I've been really working on recently, is like not over processing stuff. You know, if you have a really good and fat sounding kick like this, it's like just let it breathe, you know, let that be what it is and just level it out in the mix. There's a little bit of group processing here, but like, you know, just kind of like getting this loud enough rather than adding a bunch of extra stuff to it. So the kick is dry, but then the way the rumble's being made is it's actually the kick. You can see it's the exact same thing here. What's happening is we're actually playing 16th notes. So you can see there's an arpeggiator there that's doing the 16ths. And yeah, and then we just have some reverb, which, when you just hear it on its own like that, it might not make a whole lot of sense, but the reverb adds a lot of, like, really good texture to the rumble. It really works when you add in this amp here, so yeah, you can hear that that's what kind of creates, like, the rumbly effect. And I'll turn on this low pass filter here and the drum bus. You can see that's really, like, you know, just filtering it down, so it's going to be just the low end, and then the drum bus is just making it really fat, and obviously, like, the boom helps with the bass. Now, the reason why we use the reverb is you can hear it when we have these three on. Here's without the reverb. It doesn't sound like as much of a rumble. It's kind of like, just sounds like this da-da-da-da-da-da. When we add the reverb, it kind of smooths it out. And you can hear, like, it just kind of gives it more of that, like, nice sort of rumbly texture. And then the last things on there are we just have this EQ cutting at 100 hertz, boosting the low end a little bit, and then this compressor, which is just sidechaining this to the kick. And there's the rumble. And then on the group there, we just have a bit of saturation. So here's without it. With it. It's really subtle, but you can hear it just gives that extra sort of glue to the kick and the rumble and really makes them feel like full and like one element together. And yeah, then we have the synth string. So this is just playing this pattern. Now you'll notice what's happening here is it actually follows the bass line, where it's not playing the same notes as the bass line. They do start on the same note. But every time the bass line changes notes, this changes notes. And like, you can hear, you get kind of like a cool, like, it's not just about the notes that are being played in this isolated sound. Of course, they do sound cool, but it's very much about how they're playing off of the respace there. And like, you're getting that kind of unison with these. And how it kind of adds a more evil sound to everything. For the sound, it's made with analog. So we have a saw wave and a square wave here with a bit of noise. And then we just have the amp envelope set like that. And then we just have some vibrato and unison. It's a pretty simple sound, you know. You just want to create this big, like, kind of bright string sound. And then we just have a bit of chorus. You can see I have the rate all the way down, so it's a bit slower. And then we just have some reverb to give it some space, a bit of saturation, just making it a bit fatter, and that also brings out the space. And then we just have a high pass filter to get rid of the low end. And then finally we have a compressor, side chaining it to the kick. And that is it for the synth string. And then we have the lead. So you'll notice that the root notes of this follow the re-space. It's just doing don't. It's in the same places as where the bass notes are changing on the actual bass line, but then these high notes are kind of what's changing. So you can see we're really just using the same kind of like G, like dark scale like we were using like for the synth string, where you can see we have G, which technically that would be like an F minor chord there. We have this D sharp. So it's just like pretty simple notes that are just in the G minor scale. And just getting really creative with them in terms of like, you know, making this very anthemic pattern that's very trancey and hardstyle influenced. For the sound, this one's made with Wavetable. We have a saw wave and a square wave, which you can see we've got a bit of the pulse width turned up on the square wave. And then we just have the amp envelope like that. And then you can see I have a ton of unison inside of Wavetable here, where you can see, yeah, it's got 8 voices, the amount's at 86%, so it's quite a bit of unison there. But yeah, you know, that's what gives this that huge, you know, super big, trancey super saw sound. Then we just have some reverb to give it some space. I have my ultimate stereo widening rack. Here's without that. And with it, you can hear it just kind of spreads it out a little bit more, you know. It helps to kind of put it in its own place in the mix. And then we just have that going through a bit of drum bus after the stereo widening rack. And then we have a bit of a high pass filter, a compressor to sidechain into the kick, and then this washout, which I was playing with, but we're not hearing it now. And yeah, that's it for the lead. Then we have the re-space. So here are the notes for the re-space. You know, it's a very simple pattern. Again, it's the same scale that you've been seeing with these other parts that I've been showing you. Just that like G sharp. Very like evil feeling. It's still sticking true to the minor sound as well. Now for the sound on this one, this is also made with Wavetable. You can see Wavetable's really good for these style of tracks because you can just create these really fat sounds. So what's happening here is you can see we have a saw wave and then I believe just... Yeah, so this here we actually have this brutal metal wavetable here. So this is one of the distortion wavetables inside of Ableton's Wavetable. If I turn off the filter, so basically it's this playing over top of this saw wave. And that's what's creating the sound. So yeah, if you're making like a big Reese like this, you know, of course like the classic Reese bass sound is 2 saw waves, detune, maybe a pulse wave, something like that. But I recommend trying different stuff like this, because this is really subtle. You don't really notice it necessarily, like, as being this, like, very obvious thing. But it's that little subtle thing that's going to make a big difference. And make your track just that much more interesting and more unique. And yeah, and then we have this low pass filter here, which you can see I have the drive on that. So if I turn off, if I set this on the clean setting, see how it's like not that much, like it's not that crunchy. This OSR and the drive really allows you to give it that mid-range crunch. So I really recommend you play with that. Then we just have this LFO here, which you can see is on the oscillator 2 wavetable position. And then the last thing inside of the synth here is we just have a bit of unison. It's on the classic setting. We have 7 voices. The amount's at 93%. And yeah, and then after that, we just have this drum bus. You can see it's hitting pretty hard. We have it on the hard setting. So here's without this. And then with it. So yeah, you hear why we do that. You know, it just gives it the nice crunch and fatness in the mid-range. Then we have this compressor, which is just side-chaining this to the kick, which we're just side-chaining into the drag kick, not the rumble. And the last thing here is this EQ. And this is really important because, of course, with this track, you know, the real, like, kind of main stuff here is how all this low end is working together and how you're able to have a rumble kick and a re-space at the same time. Because obviously, like, you wouldn't really usually do that because obviously the respace and the rumble kick would clash. This EQ is how we're able to make it work. You notice, like, if I solo the bass, the respace, and the kick at the same time, you still don't really hear that bass. There's still something missing. And then when the rumble comes in, it fills that out. That's what you want. When you're creating this type of a track where you're going to have, like, a respace and a rumble kick, you can do that, but you just have to make sure you set it up so that everything is really fitting into its own space. Like, the respace line is going to be in its own space, the rumble is going to be in its own space, the kick is going to be in its own space. So if you have any of these on their own, or like if you take out one of them, you would be able to tell. And that's the idea, versus like just having a bunch of messy low end in the respace and in the rumble and having it all clash together and create a mess. And yeah, then we just have this delay percussion, which sounds like this. So what it is, it's just these two little percussion sounds, these little like effects. You get kind of like a call and response because it's like. It's a really subtle thing, but that little subtlety is making a big difference. But then you can see we have it going through a delay, just doing eighth notes and a bit of drum bus. And what this creates is kind of some more spaced out percussion, because like, of course you're always gonna have like this stuff, which is, that's the main percussion. But if you just have that in the track, it's gonna be a bit flat. Like if I turn this off and if I turn off this noise stab, like I said, it's gonna feel a bit flat. Versus if you have that stuff that's constantly going, but you also add in some stuff like this, which is just kind of like stop and start. Essentially that's what's gonna make your tracks unique. It's like how you're able to do that. So I really recommend you play with some stuff like this. Like don't just have the main hi-hats and stuff. Also try adding some background percussion. Then we have this rave shaker, which sounds like this. So yeah, this is one of those nice, crunchy, hard groove style techno shakers like you would hear in a lot of tracks in the style. It's got that really like classic kind of 90s, 2000s techno trance sort of feel. And this is one of those things you just kind of get the loop and bring it in here, like. It's all about just bringing in a lot of different textures from different sources with this kind of a percussion. So we just have that in there to add some nice texture and some kind of groove to the hi-hats. Then we have this noise stab. Which you can hear, like if I play that with the delay percussion, like any one of these on their own might seem a bit small, but you notice when you start to put them together, like that groove right there of these two layers playing shows you why it's important to have this background percussion. This background percussion is really going to make a big difference when it comes to that, and it's just going to add, again, like just so much more intensity to your groove and make your tracks more unique. So the way that I made this one is it's just white noise, and then it's going into a bandpass filter here inside of operator. And then the key here is that we're using a very high resonance, and then we're distorting it. So if I turn the resonance down, you can see we don't get that like, you can hear that. It's got like a tone to it. So yeah, this hard shaper here is really good for that. I just turned the drive up all the way. And then we just have some reverb. You can see it's like a little bit shorter reverb, the K time is just there. Then we have some drum bus, which you can see, just kind of gives it a bit more fatness, It helps when you're making percussion with a synth like this to add some drum bus to it, because it can really give it more of like a kind of percussive texture. And then finally we just have a high pass filter, and then we have the hi-hat. So this will just be your standard sort of like, very fat 909 style hi-hat. Just gotta go into some reverb and a bit of drum bus. And then we have the clap. Same deal, just like a nice fat hard techno clap. Now one thing I will talk about with all this percussion before we go is that kind of like the way that you mix it is really, really important. Like something that I've been learning recently, and a lot of my older videos, you guys, and my older tracks, you can probably hear this and know, is like, when you're making techno, it really just needs to be like mainly focused on the bass. Like the loudest thing should be the bass and the kick. So like when you're mixing your track, usually you actually want to kind of turn the percussion down a little bit and like not really get it like right on the top of the mix. Like it's actually supposed to sound like the percussion's a little bit too quiet, and even like the synths and stuff too, because it's just going to make that kick and bass feel that much louder. And when I was making this one in particular, I really tried to mix it for that, and you can tell, like you can really hear it. Yeah, the percussion and the synths and stuff are still really fat and really full, but nothing is louder or more full than the from the kick and the rumble. So yeah, that is going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the full project file, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video is available right in the top of the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there, because it's already available. Thank you so much for the support, guys. Every sale of those sample packs, even though they're just $5, really helps to support me and keep me going, so I can keep bringing you guys new videos every day. And yeah, thanks guys, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.